a low self-esteem. We don't care if it's a weird look or a strange look or a different look for somebody. We just want somebody to look. And for some of us, we do it in places where no one can see. But the truth is, that mechanism, I promise you, I'm about getting to the root of the problem. And I know in that place, in that moment when we self-injure or we self-harm or we're having those real thoughts of wanting to end it. And for me, I had an eating disorder of bulimia. I had so many different mental and emotional things that I've realized that no matter when I activated one of those reactions, it never got to the root because I still felt it every single day. And then truthfully, as I walked away from those good friends and I began to rip and run with a new crowd and a new clique of kids like they weren't my people, they didn't really know me and they brought me into their circle. But see, the truth is hurting people hurt people. And for some of us in here, we deal with the hurt and the wounds and the pains from our past totally different. Some of us, we really battle thoughts of wanting to end our life. Some of us, we deal with self-injury and self-harm and we inflict pain. But others of us, how we deal with your hurt and your pain, man, hurting people hurt people. So you step on people with your words and you try to take your worth and take your value. See, the truth of the matter is, I got to a place where I was surrounded a bunch of people that were really emotionally and mentally and is physically abusive. We can call it bullying, but it's social, emotional, and mental abuse. Hurting people hurt people. And so I wanted to fit in, so I found maybe this is how I could deal with some of my trauma, my hurts, and my pains, and I didn't like it. So literally, because I was so broken and I had such low self-esteem, I would come to school and find people that I thought were weaker than me and step on them and try to take my worth and take my value and prove to all of you that I matter. Hurting people hurt people. So for some of you, you know who you are, the class clowns, the jokers, the one of you that act like you just don't give a rip about anything. Well, the truth is when no one's around and the smoke and the mirrors are gone and you're not trying to put on for the crowd and the clique and the group around you, when you look in the mirror, you don't like who you see. See, this was my journey. This was my story. I was battling this place. And then they said, hey, Nathan, on the weekend, I was a sophomore. And they, hey, on the weekend, come pop the pill, take the drink, come over here, do this. No, I'm cool. I'm going to prove to my dad that I don't need him. But eventually the peer pressure is real because at the end of the day, who you surround yourself with matters. And that's why some of you have dreams and goals, but truthfully, you're surrounding yourself with the wrong crowds and the wrong groups, and they're affecting you and they're rubbing off on you. And so sometimes you got to make some tough decisions of who are you ripping and who are you running with. But for me, they were like, hey, Nathan, on the weekend, come pop the pill, take the drink. And I remember that weekend that I went and I just wanted to fit in, right? Because I just wanted to belong, even though I didn't want to let anybody in. I remember that weekend when I got high and I was drunk and I went home that weekend and I hid it from my mom and it was no big deal. And truthfully, everybody told me the dangers of drugs and alcohol. And in that weekend and in that moment, it wasn't anything bad happened. Honestly, truthfully, it kind of made me feel better for a moment because all the emotional, the hurts, the pain, some of the things that I didn't want to deal with, the real life practical situations, I thought it was going to be a way of an escape. And yet, but band-aided it for a moment. But here's the problem with substance abuse and drugs and alcohol. It's a counterfeit connection. It's a band-aid, and yep, it may solve it for a moment, but when you're wounded and you're dealing with traumas and issues, man, when you begin to experiment around with these situations, man, it locks onto you and it becomes your coping mechanism. And then what happens is it gives me a sense of community because I got a group or a crowd that I share the habit with, that I party and that lifestyle, so I can have a sense of belonging and that I got people in my corner, but I never have to let any of you in because it never has to get below the surface. It can just be sharing the common habit. It's the counterfeit connection. See, I went from straight A's to straight F's. This picture on your left, man, it's a real picture. Literally, I was a heartbeat away from probably a drug overdose. My life begins to spiral out of control. I go from being a freshman, voted one of the most successful freshmen in the class. By the time I'm a senior, I go from straight A's to straight F's. I get expelled because I skipped school 60 to 63 times. I go to the military at a young age, and the drugs and the alcohol just begin to consume me. And again, I'm in this place where I'm just not dealing with the pressure, right? There's always going to be external pressure, but if we don't deal with it properly, the pressure can bust pipes. And for me, because I wouldn't let anybody in, the pressure was real, and I had thoughts of wanting to end my life and self-injury and self-harm and eating disorders and hurting people. And I would fight you in a heartbeat because, man, I was going to prove to people that I matter, but I didn't trust, so I wouldn't let you in. And drugs and alcohol, this was my life. And I go to the Army at 18, not because I wanted to, it's kind of because I had to. because I really had been kicked out of my mom's and kicked out of other people's houses. And so I'm in the military for about 18 months, and I graduated at Fort Sill, Oklahoma with honors, and I was stationed in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, 101st 3rd Brigade, Rakkasan. The problem was I couldn't give up the addiction, that counterfeit connection, and I failed a bunch of drug screens, and only by a gracious moment, I didn't get a dishonorable discharge. I got an other than honorable discharge, and I came back to my hometown, and here I was at 18, 19, 20, 21, not really making any progress because I wouldn't face the thing that honestly I was the most afraid of the most, me. And I would love to say that I figured it all out, but I was still living in all of these hurts and from these places, and a bunch of my friends went to a party, and they said, hey, Nate, you know, we're going to go out to this party this weekend. Do you want to come? And I said, let's do it. So I met my guys out there at the pool barn, and we had a bunch of beer and some drugs, and we were partying. It's the weekend. I'm 23. It's what we do, right? And when the alcohol was gone, they said, Nate, we're going to go to the bar. Do you want to come? And I'm like, well, let's do that. I was 23. Let's roll. So we go to the bar, and I had 10 more shots of alcohol, and I'm extremely drunk. And they said, Nate, the bar's about to close. We're going to go to TJ's house. Do you want to ride? I said, that's a great idea. They said, well, actually, T's not there right now, but we got the keys to his house. Why don't you leave a little bit early and go get the house ready for the after party, and when the bar closes, we'll bring everybody there. I said, that's a great idea, but I'm not going to drive. So I jump on my phone, and I call Priscilla. Priscilla was our friend that had moved from Alabama. She had friended the group of about 8 of us that were there that night, but she didn't come out. And I said, hey, Scylla, I need a ride to T's house. I'm too drunk to drive. Can you come get me? And she said, I'll be there. She shows up a little bit later, and I remember that by the time she had gotten there, I had bought this case of beer bottles. And as I'm leaving, my buddy Mike stops me, and Mike says, Nate, you're not driving. I said, nah, bro, she is. She's my DD. And so we walk out the bar. In the process of leaving the bar and getting to her car, somewhere in that process, I got the keys. And I talk about moments of impact, moments when I can remember every single detail. They're more vivid, they're more vibrant, they're more descriptive. We were right around the corner from TJ's house. And as I close my eyes, I can hear her voice, I can see her face, man. She said this word to me, it echoes and it rings. We were right around the corner. It was simply this moment of impact that I can always just recall, like picture memory recall. We were right around the corner. She said, tree! And then I was in a helicopter. And then I was laying in a hospital bed with 2 police officers over top of me, asking me questions. What's her name? Her cell phone was locked and her ID wasn't in her purse, and she's fighting for her life, and nobody knows who she is. And I wake up and I say, her name's Priscilla Owens, and my ankle's shattered and it's throbbing, and I don't know what's happening. And I look to my left and there's my mom. And I don't know exactly the process or why or what happened and transpired. But that moment, after the next hour, the police didn't arrest me right then and there. They, maybe because of my medical issue with my shattered ankle, or they were still trying to figure out to process what had happened that night, what charges to pursue. But they said, Mr. Harmon, we can't tell you anything about Priscilla, but you're not family. But she's not doing too well. And they let me crutch home with my mom. And I remember when I got into the car with my mom, like I just wanted my mother. And she said, Nathan, your life's about to change. You see, my sister was a nurse, so when the accident happened, she got the phone call. By the time she had gotten to the hospital, I had already been lifelined away. But she read the police report and she read the ambulance report. The police report said the amount of impact, there was no brake marks, no skid marks, no signs of me trying to stop. 60 to 63, just boom. And upon impact, my hands were on the steering wheel and it snapped the steering column and it knocked me unconscious. And my foot was on the gas pedal and it shattered my ankle. In the case of beer bottles in the back passenger seat, it flew forward. And Priscilla didn't put on her seatbelt and she flew forward. And Priscilla and the beer, as they hit the windshield. And my mom said, there's not a lot of brain activity, Nathan. Things aren't about to ever be the same again. And you get home, and I remember back at times when I'd hear conversations like these in my schools, and they'd go through one ear and out the other, and you'd have people communicating about these topics and issues, and then you always think that happens to everybody else. And here I am, and I get home, and I call the police, and I call the hospital, but they won't tell me anything because I'm not family. But the newspaper had said 2 lifeline to Parkview Hospital, 1 fighting for their life. And so I decided I was going to stay up the entire night, and I sat and I waited in this driveway. Let her live, and I will change my life. And it was like a movie, and everything slowed down. And this white Cherokee came rolling by, and he rolls his window down, and the paper gets thrown, and I swear everything goes with slow motion, and it hits the ground, and I jump up, and I grab it, and I rip it open, and I read 3 words, and I just read the words: crash, victim, dies. And if I could change it 1,000,000 times over, I would. Her name is Priscilla Owens, a friend of mine. And I always say it right here in this moment: if anybody in the room has ever been affected by anything similar or of any kind of nature, I get it. And I can't be in your shoes and I can't replace, but I promise you, I am sorry. What begins to happen as I shift this talk a little bit? It's not normal. Her family, 3 days after the accident, they wanted me to contact them. What do you say? I'm sorry, forgive me? Like, what's that conversation about to look like? And I pick up the phone and I'm terrified, and I call Carolyn, the mother, and Olivia, the sister, and Paige, the niece. They're all at the house when I call. And I'm just weeping, and I'm trying to say, I'm sorry. Like, I don't even have words to speak. I've never met her family before. She had moved from Alabama. She had befriended a group of us. And I'm calling this family because they wanted me to. And I'm having nothing to say. And the family says, Nathan, listen, we're numb, we're angry, we're mad. We don't know what we feel. But what we do know is in this moment, we have decided to pick love over hate. And in this moment, we're going to decide to forgive even though we don't know how. But we just want you to know that we don't think one dumb choice. And I said, no, this is my fault. You have no idea. They said, we understand. Yes, you're responsible. But we are picking love in this moment. But we're asking you to do 2 things. Don't let our daughter die for nothing, and try to make the world a better place. And I didn't even know what that meant or how or what that even could mean. I say yes, but I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense. And listen to me. Don't any of you think for one moment you can rip and you can run and you can live your life and everything just always turns out normal. I promise you, this family forgiving me, it's an exception. I don't know where I would be if they didn't forgive me the way that they done. But choices have consequences. And just because the family forgave me, it doesn't mean the state of Indiana did. They sure didn't. And at 23 years old, when I should have been a senior graduating college, I found myself at 23 years old, face to face with being charged with 15 years in prison. And listen to me. It would have been easy for me when I walked into that prison to say, you know what, my life's just too tough, it's too hard, it's too difficult. I come from a broken past. I come from suicidal thoughts and tries and attempts, and I come from this place of the mental place that's so broken, and the self-injury and the self-harm and the self-esteem, and I come from traumas and verbal, mental, and emotional abuses, and I come from a lot of broken stuff and baggages. It would have been real easy to say, you know what, life's just too tough and I'm ready to give up and I quit. But you know what I remember? I remember when my dad, when I was that young man, he used to smack this basketball off my face, and he used to always tell me this line, man, and I've held on to it and I cling to it. He used to always tell me, as long as there's breath in your lungs, there's hope in your heart. As long as you're breathing. And in that moment, I began to really realize that, listen, you're not a factor or a product of your environment. No matter what your unique story or situation has been, no matter what your individual situation, you're not a product of what you've had or what you haven't had or what's happened to you or what hasn't happened to you. But we are products of literally what will we do in the face of being present in the moment. And so for me, I wrote this word, change the world, and I slapped it and I put it on the bathroom mirror in my little prison cell, and I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know that for me, when I began to pursue every day doing the next best thing and trying to work on my behavior and my attitude and using the tool of communication and that realizing that we need each other, I didn't know that I was going to become a communicator and travel the country and the world and use voice and vocational and communication to try to move the opinions and the emotion of people to change. I just knew that I wanted to do something different. But I realized that how I had dealt with my life up to this point, it wasn't working. How did I know? I was in prison. Apparently, however I was dealing with the social, the emotional, the relationship piece of my own choices and my own decisions, it wasn't working. And so the very first thing that I had to begin to do was I remember that I looked in that mirror and I realized that the mask, the social, the emotional one, the one that doesn't let anybody in, I realized that that thing was nothing more than a lie, and it was a counterfeit. And so the first thing that I had to begin to do was to get to a place where I had to do it afraid, and sometimes it was super uncomfortable, but I had to find starting those people in my circle that I knew were for me, and to begin to do it afraid and begin to speak up and to speak out. See, what happened in my life over the last several years is when I stopped running and started embracing the uncomfortable situations in front of us, is I've developed these things that I didn't mean to, but I call them the 5 habits of my heart and my mind. And it's transparency and accountability and hard work and good choices, and it's value in people. See, transparency is powerful, man. I always say that inside of your DNA, inside of you, is perseverance. Inside of you is the ability to solve any problem that you're experiencing. But how you activate it is through communication and community. Because truthfully, none of us are an island. We're not meant to do this on our own. We won't see our blind spots. And so when I found the ability to do it afraid, which was really difficult because I had trust issues, which was really challenging because I had to be vulnerable, which was really, really challenging because I didn't like feeling certain types of ways. But here's what I learned, man, it's powerful. I need you to come here real quick. Stand up right here. Yep, come here. What's your name, my guy? James, what's up? You play sports?
Yeah.
What do you play?
Football, wrestling, and track.
Perfect, man. Here's what I need, James. Here's the power, man, of what I want to share with you. Man, James, if we were living and I was part of this community and we were kicking it and we were guys and we played sports together and we knew our stories and our journeys and we really lived life together, James, I would know your story, you would know mine. And here's the powerful thing, man. There was times in my life that I used to put on the mask and not let anybody in about the struggles. But when I finally got to the place that I was going to do it afraid and live transparent, which means this, kind of see-through, the people around me, I allow them to see the real me, not the one that I portray, but they really know some of the difficulties and the emotional stuff and just life. But here's what happens. When I began doing it afraid, James, and I began using the resources of the people in my circle, bro, it's not that I needed you to have the epiphanies. I didn't need you to have every answer to every question. Here's what I needed you to do. See, the power of communication is what activates inside of me problem solving. Every good math teacher will say this: how do you solve the problem? The first thing you got to do is identify the problem. And communication, honestly, is this power of speaking up and speaking out. So James, when I started sitting next to you and we started sharing, it wasn't that you were giving me all the epiphanies. You were just listening and I was starting to problem solve. And yes, you would encourage me. And yes, we would begin to feel a camaraderie. But here's the thing. As I got the boldness to share about my stuff, James, you started finding courage and you started sharing about your stuff. And you know what I really learned in this journey of facing my fears and getting to a place where I don't give one rip or one iota, one flip what any of you think about me? Because my value doesn't come from you. A long time I wouldn't talk about the hurts, the habits, the pains, the emotional abuses, the traumas, because I was so concerned of what others would think. But when I got to the place of just doing it afraid, and you started finding the courage because I was showing courage, I realized something, that every single one of us in this room, every single person that you see living through highlights on social media, every single person, every business person, I don't care who's you've seen in front of your eyes, we are all beautifully broken some way, somehow, man. We've all got stuff. And when I got to that place of being so comfortable there, what happened, James, is I started being transparent. But here's what really the power is this, bro. How many of you, are there areas in your life that you know you want to change, you should change, you need to change? There are real behaviors or maybe choices or crowds or certain ways that you live your life or attitudes or behaviors. There are things in your life that you know you should change, you want to change, you need to change, but truthfully, nothing ever changes. How many of y'all in here, right? Am I the only one? Yeah, you want to know why? Because change is extremely uncomfortable. And no one wakes up and says, today I want to be uncomfortable. No, we run back to being what we've always been. That's real. And what I learned, bro, is this, man. Let me see your hand. I want you to get tough, man, like you're playing ball. Watch this, man. Listen, James, here's the thing, bro. When I started being transparent and I started opening up, Transparency and accountability. Accountability, James, when I was a kid was like someone's gonna tell on me, someone's looking to write me up. Like accountability was a cringe word. Like I don't wanna be accountable because that means someone's watching me. But I realized, James, is this, man. See, you can't make me change. As we live life and we're transparent and you're in my circle, see, you can't make me be better and you can't make me be worse. But when that emotion of, man, that fear of failure, that fear of wanting to take off, get tough, don't let me move, man. And what would happen when I had that emotion of fight or flight and I take off, and we start living life. And you can't make me change, but I begin using this thing called accountability and transparency, where you become an anchor. You can't make me be better, but you can't make me run either. But what you can do is that when you know me as your guy, as your friend, when you know the heart that I'm trying to overcome this fear or this disappointment or this behavior, and that emotion gets real and there's that fight or flight, and I want to take off, you can hold me. You become my anchor. See, power in our DNA of perseverance and our ability to problem solve and the tenacity and the grit that's inside of all of you, it gets activated by communication, because in community, man, it begins to stir something inside, deep inside of you, because you're not meant to be an island. You're not meant to suppress. It's okay to be vulnerable. There is freedom in my vulnerability. Thank you, man. Have a seat. Give him a round of applause. And so here I was. Real talk, y'all. I got to the place where I just started doing it afraid, and it didn't change everything overnight. No, man, I still had my issues. And it would have been real easy to say, you know what? Next week, next semester, next year, that's what I'm going to face and change a behavior. But right there in the middle of my environment, I realized that I was going to be transparent and accountable. But here comes the truth. Hard work works. Make good choices, good things happen. And here's what I mean by that. There's never a wrong time to do what's right. What I feed will grow and what I starve will die. That's why I always tell every single person, I don't care how young to how old you are, what is your why? What are you throwing against the wall and seeing what's going to stick? I don't like calling them dreams and goals, but what's the plan? Their dreams, their goals, their plans. What are the things that you're passionate about? I don't care how much your struggle's been. I don't care how much trauma you've had to experience. What you feed will grow and what you starve will die. I need you to begin to throw things against the wall, things that you're passionate about, and say, today, I want to do the next thing that brings that thing closer to me. I don't want to make the choices and decisions that push it farther away, because hard work works. Make good choices, good things happen. And the truth of the matter is, your environment doesn't dictate the fact that if you do the next right thing, hard work and good choices, in spite of your environment, will open up doors for you to succeed and to get glimpses of the next step, the next purpose. The truth is, in your culture right now, at your age group, some of it see it as a negative thing, man. I see it as opportunity. So many right now are so lazy. We talk about it, we post about it, but nobody wants to self-regulate. Nobody wants to look in the mirror and say, yes, I can, and just apply themselves. You're living in right now in a group, in a space that every single one of you, if you will just apply yourself and to begin to literally take your eyes off the distractions and to do the next right thing of whatever it is that you've thrown against the wall, I promise you, by default, you will separate yourself from the crowd, because others talk, others post, but nobody wants to roll up their sleeves and just do. And so for some of you, you've got goals and dreams, but man, you're ripping and you're running with crowds of people that aren't about the right, and they're causing you to compromise. And that's just real. And so for me, in the middle of prison, I started working on my behavior and my attitude. I began to realize that I wanted to be a communicator. And so every single day in the middle of my struggle, is this choice, is this helping me bring my dream closer, or is it pushing it farther away? Because the truth is, all of you that have a license up in here, and when you look in your rear view mirror, it says the words, objects in the mirror are closer than things appear. And for a lot of us, you're like, yep, next semester, next year, in a couple years, I'm going to, no, right now, what you do is what you believe. And truthfully, on the mental and the emotional side, when I started thinking about dreams and goals and plans and things that I were throwing against the wall and seeing what was going to stick, I wasn't focusing on the pity and the struggle and the hurt and the pain. Not that those feelings aren't valid. But I promise you, what you give away is what you get to keep. And here's what I mean. You see, I started working on transparency and accountability and hard work and good choices. Why do I always say that your environment does not dictate your opportunity, but what you do does? Because I was incarcerated in prison, but year 2, 3, and 4 into my prison sentence, the first 3 years actually, I was working on my behavior, my attitude. I was working on me. I wasn't making excuses. Good choices will always create opportunities no matter where you're at in life. I started leaving the prison in street clothes while I was in prison. They started a program. It was crazy. I was selected, and I would leave the prison in street clothes, go out to the Division I colleges all across the state of Indiana, and conferences and high schools and different corporations, and I would live life and I would talk. The first 3 years in my prison. Why? Because our environments do not dictate us. It's what you do in the middle of your storm. I got released 11 and a half years early. A governor of Indiana said, this young man's more effective out there than he is in here. And I came to my hometown. But can I be honest? How many of you in here, have there been people in your life that honestly, man, you were serious about changing, you were serious about something, and you went to share with them, and you were excited because it was a real moment for you, and you were met with discouragement, you were met with defeating words, and you walked away from them, and you're like, why should I even try to change? And nobody believes in me. Anybody? Yep. You know, the truth is, I used to fall for that trap over and over and over again, but this time it was going to be different. I knew I was different. I knew that there's this thing inside of me had been activated because I no longer cared about the opinions of the people around me. Like, communication is the most powerful tool that we have in humanity. Your ability to critical think is what sets you and me apart. And we can't allow our voice and our ability to find the courage, no matter what we feel, to suppress and to know that there are people that are in your space, that are in your circle. Man, they long to hear your heart, to hear your story. But this time, instead of getting offended because nobody believed in me, they had the right to feel that way. They had heard this song before. And so instead of being offended, I said, you know what? I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to make so many good choices, they can't deny my actions. And I reached out to one public school when 1 turned to 10 and 10 turned to